You got barbecue back there, and you didn't invite me. Hurt my feelings.
Welcome back to another episode of Dynasty Theory, Week 6. It's almost in the books. As I always say, we're recording Monday night. Dan, we're almost halfway through the fantasy regular season.
Man, it's flying by, boys, and it's exciting. It's getting exciting. But I got to start tonight just saying congrats to Mitch, man. His Detroit Lions just pancaked my Dallas Cowboys. You want to talk about ownership, coaching, and culture and how it just translates to fantasy football. It is all clicking for Mitch's Detroit Lions, man. So not just blowing smoke, man. That team looks really good, Mitchell.
Dude, I'm excited. They play the Vikings, the undefeated Vikings this coming week. Well, if they do well there, then I'll be really happy. But, you know, any team that could run against Dallas is going to do well right now. So we'll see when they play the Vikings.
All right. Well, we could get into a Detroit Dallas recap. You guys could go have your love.
I think
fest
it's a good
over
idea.
there.
Hey, the love fest is one-sided, JB. I'm really like, you look at Jared Goff. How many quarterbacks do we talk about in Dynasty Theory of, you know, he's bad? Is it the team? Is it the ownership? Is it the coaching? Put it all together. I mean, Jared Goff is like soaring up my rankings there. You don't draft Jamar Chase because you draft smart through the O-line with Penny Sewell. You get the Sun God, who, JB, I remember you being pretty high on the Sun God coming out of USC. He's a number one receiver. You draft an Iowa tight end in Laporta, elite tight end. 2 stud running backs. It's just all clicking.
Well, speaking of clicking, there have been several players where things have been clicking for them. Do you see how I went there?
Well done.
And, you know, the last few episodes of Dynasty Theory, you know, we've taken a turn towards negative town a little bit, talking about players that we should be looking to move. Tonight, we want to spend some time talking about players that we should be looking to acquire. And I was like, it's kind of like 3 Men and a Baby, that movie. It's like 4 wide receivers and a quarterback tonight. Those are the guys we want to spend some time talking about. And the first one is Tee Higgins. I sent out in our group chat, I said, Dan, Mitch, DM me a few guys that you're looking to acquire at their current value that are kind of in this range of players. You both sent me 5 players over. There was only one player that had some overlap, and it was Tee Higgins. So, Dan, let's start with you. Tee Higgins, what have you seen so far that the coach in you is just like, this dude, I want him on my dynasty teams?
Yeah, man. The coach in me likes the film. You know, he's making some catches. He's getting open. He looks like a stud wide receiver. But the homework assignment you gave Mitchell and I there, he was just on the list of a lot of players that you made available. He was like one of the best. I look at him as the best young wide receiver too, tied to Joe Burrow until he becomes a wide receiver somewhere else. That's often on the trade block. How often do we see Tee Higgins on a trade block? So I was trying to look at guys, JB, that I liked. They look good on film. They made sense for fantasy. And I think they could be attainable. You know, it would be very easy for any one of us tonight to say, hey, I want to go get Justin Jefferson or CeeDee Lamb, and hey, good luck with that. Tee Higgins is very often on the block, and he checked the boxes of a guys that I would want to acquire.
Mitch, what about you? Again, this is the only player where there was some overlap.
Right. I mean, I've talked about him a lot this offseason, but a big thing is if you sign up on DD Fantasy, you go to the Trinity Report. If you look at the top 25 guys that pull up, the second you go to the overall Trinity score, you look at all those guys, they're all the elite of the elite. They're all the guys that you want to build your dynasty teams around. Tee Higgins is 7th right now. Tee Higgins is awesome. And you could go through his stuff to where he's scoring almost 16 points a game, 33% air yard, target shares 28%. But a big thing with Tee Higgins is there's a lot of times to where we have these wide receivers that are on 1-year contracts. And we talk about there being hype in the offseason if they move to another team. But a lot of times that hype doesn't actually turn into real dynasty value. With Tee Higgins, I truly believe it does. Tee Higgins is already valued high. What happens? Let's say if he just goes to the Patriots, not a team that everyone's super happy about their offense, dynasty-wise. But he goes on in there and he's automatically going to be the wide receiver 1 off the bat. That happens. His value is going up. Guess what? If he stays with the Bengals, his value is going to be fine and he's going to produce no matter where he goes. So he is a guy that no matter what, whether I'm contending, whether I'm rebuilding, I'm willing to go out and acquire him for slightly above cost. And that's the big thing. On previous weeks, we're talking about, hey, guys, we're willing to sell because they're not doing what we want. Buys are tough because there's a lot of people, and I actually received a DM this week from someone saying, hey, I normally don't like to lose trades, but I'm willing to lose this one. He wasn't. It was on like a trade calculator that, he said was good, right? But being willing to go out and get players that you're willing to spend a little bit above cost to get them on your team is something really hard to do in Dynasty. Because if you're wrong, it is costing you value, future, and contending and everything. But Tee Higgins is a guy I am more than willing to do, and I have been willing to do it for the last 2 months now.
And it's really difficult this time of year when you look at potential trade partners. Yeah, we've talked about this. We talk about it during the season, during the off season. But in a typical 12-team league, you have 11 trade partners. Every league has those managers that are away from the keyboard, so to speak. Mm-hmm. So they're unavailable. If you're looking to contend, you have other teams in your league that are also looking to contend. So you're not always a compatible trade partner. And then you have teams at, towards the bottom of the standings that maybe they should be looking to rebuild, but it's still really difficult to prize some of these assets from those managers. And Tee Higgins, I think he's going to be one that falls into that category of, he's young enough that rebuilding teams don't necessarily mind moving assets to acquire, but also he's producing. He's only 25 years old. He is on the 1-year deal, essentially, 1 year remaining here in Cincinnati. But then how many times, and I know it happens to all of us in trade discussions, and this ties back into Mitch's point about no matter where he goes, if he's their de facto wide receiver 1, there's going to be a little bit of a value bump. How many discussions have we all had where we're trying to trade Tee Higgins maybe, or Devontae Smith or Jalen Waddle? Well, he's not his team's wide receiver 1. And as a result, like, you have that really interesting dynamic in managers that are looking to acquire or looking to sell certain players. So for Tee Higgins, before we get into the trades, and, as we typically do week in and week out, we pull different players that we're talking about, try to get more of an overarching view on that prototype, that archetype there of a player. But also we look at specific trades that are going down, and maybe just to give ideas. If you agree, if you disagree, I always say we are here to spark ideas. And if we do just that, I'm happy with it. So Tee Higgins, Mitch, you talk about the Trinity score over there at ddfantasyfootball.com. The last 3 weeks, and we always try to look for trends in fantasy football. The last 3 weeks, he is 5th in Trinity score, which is kind of a combination of air yard share, target share, yards after catch per reception, and then you tie in yards per route run. But over those last 3 weeks, 18.7 points per game in PPR settings. That's 8th. 39% air yard share. So, Mitch, you were spitting some numbers out earlier. The last 3 weeks, it's improved on what you said. 31% target share. That is 5th. And then 2.24 yards per out run. So he is checking every box. And it's the wide receiver 2 on his own team narrative. It's the he can't really stay healthy narrative. But these are all reasons that you should be going to look to acquire a player like Tee Higgins, because he is attainable. And I believe that. So even in my tiers, I have him in red from a wide receiver perspective. But like, I still think you could find managers that you can get at that green or at least neutral value. So Dan, let's start with you here. We got a couple Tee Higgins trades. Tee Higgins and Kenneth Walker for AJ Brown and Travis Etienne, 12 teams, start 8 PPR.
Yeah, but when I saw these Tee Higgins trades, JB, they've really encouraged me to want to go out after Tee Higgins even more so than a lot of the reason we just started the show with. I like Tee Higgins and Kenneth Walker here. ETN, I think, is getting us all a little bit nervous. And hey, we'll swap stud receivers, even if AJ Brown's a little bit better, a little more on the elite. He's got some injury issues as well, and the Eagles have had some struggles. So I like the package deal there. I think I'm getting more overall with Higgins and Walker.
Mitch, you're on mute.
Will you pull the Dan?
I have no idea how that happened because I didn't mute myself. That's weird. Okay. So completely agree. Higgins and Walker for me. I've never been an ETN guy. I won't be. I love AJ Brown, and I think he's, borderline Nico Collins, Justin Jefferson type. But this is enough with Higgins and Walker to move off of him.
It's kind of addition by subtraction at this point. Like Dan and I just talked about Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby and that dynamic, and how Tank has looked really strong. And I said last week, well, it's only really a concern if Travis Etienne really starts to lose his work in the passing game. He wasn't out there on obvious passing situations before he got dinged up, and now he's week to week. So we have a shoulder issue. We got a hamstring issue. It might be time. That ship may have sailed on Travis Etienne, despite my optimism just 7 days ago. But this is a clean sweep. Give me Higgins and Kenneth Walker. Dan, Tee Higgins and Aaron Jones. Correction. Tee Higgins for Aaron Jones, Chase Brown, and a 25 third, 12-team start 9 PPR.
Yeah, there's one I just have to read it 2-3 times to make sure I'm not making a mistake, but I'm going to smash Tee Higgins on that one.
Yeah, hammer.
And these are all trades over our friend over at DynastyDaddy.com, Jeremy. He's putting all these trades in there in the trade database. They're all coming up over the last 24 hours. So despite a strong game there in week 6 from Tee Higgins, it wasn't a great game. So I expect a lot of these prices are still going to be rather attainable. Dan, Tee Higgins for Sam Darnold and Christian Watson, 12-team start 8 PPR.
I'm kind of assuming that when I see start 8 here, that just can't be super flex. So
these are all super flex.
Boy, what a weird format. Only starting 8. Unless I'm desperate for quarterback, I'm still going to go Tee Higgins. I'm just kind of looking ahead to next year as well, and assuming Sam Darnold, he may play himself into a starting spot somewhere. I mean, who knows how this story ends? But we still have some concerns with Christian Watson having any form of consistency, and again, too many question marks on one side. So give me Higgins.
Yeah, I agree with everything Dad said there. It's Higgins, Christian Watson. I was hoping he would be a difference maker this year. He's just not. And Higgins for Darnold to me is a smash on the Higgins side.
Dan, Tee Higgins for Jordan Addison in a highly valued 25 fourth, 12-team start 10 PPR.
You really got the most out of that 25 fourth, JB, and I appreciate that. But still, Tee Higgins for me, I just have him ahead of Addison.
Yeah, the only way I could see someone taking Addison on this side is if they're just a huge Vikings fan. They're like, you know what? I believe in him. That's the only case I see someone going Addison over Higgins. So easy Higgins for me.
Or if you have somebody that they're like, hey, I'm going to rebuild. I have to just get younger. There's people like that, though.
I know.
But again, so we are 1, 2, 3, 4 trades in here with Tee Higgins. We have 12 total votes on the Tee Higgins side. Mm-hmm. Make sure you hit the like button if you're watching back here on the DD Fantasy Football YouTube channel. I know you're already subscribed, but just in case you're not, make sure you hit subscribe. And then let us know on these Tee Higgins trades in the comments. Where are we wrong? Because people like to let you know. Where are we wrong on these Tee Higgins trades? All right, Dan, this is where it starts to get a little bit more interesting, I think. Tee Higgins for a 25 first and Zach Charbonnet, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
This is the perfect trade example because I think this is what we're going to see the most of, or what we have seen. You have a rebuilding team, or a team that wants to rebuild now. They're struggling this season. They look at their roster. They see Higgins. He's not in the top 32. He's just outside of that overall. So they say to themselves, hey, I can get a first-round pick and give away Higgins. I want Tee Higgins. You could have my 25 first on my team that I'm trying to make a run or solidify my roster for the postseason. take that first. Higgins is only 25. You know, he's in the prime. I'm going to get at least 5 good years out of him. We said everything good about Higgins earlier in this episode. That is the trade you're going to see. And Charbonnet just doesn't move him for me. He's just another one of those handcuff running backs that's nice at the bottom of my roster, but that's not enough to move the deal. Give me Higgins.
I agree with Dan again. I mean, it's Higgins. If I'm contending and this is my 25 first, I'm happy to give up the 109 or the 110 for Tee Higgins. Because I think at worst, let's just say he doesn't get injured, performs kind of like he is. He might be during the draft next year. Maybe he's worth the 111 or the 112 instead of the 109 today. Do you lose a little bit of value? Sure. But I mean, I just think he is such a good guy to get right now.
And it kind of makes sense. Yeah, you lose a little bit of the value, but you make up for it with the immediate production that you're getting. Now, the risk is he completely tanks the rest of the season and or he gets injured. Well, now you're not getting the production and you're certainly not getting the value, but that across the board, you can tell that's a risk that we're really willing to take. This is the trade for me that it's very team dependent. Like if I'm really set at wide receiver, even if I am contending, maybe if I think there's a chance that pick ends up mid, I trade Higgins away. If he's a receiver that I really don't need on my roster, like I'm just that strong. My flex options are really nice at this point, and my wide receivers are set. But again, if you're looking to bolster that wide receiving core and you think Tee Higgins could be that missing piece, Zach Charbonnet is not going to stop me from packaging up, just like Dan said. Last one here, Tee Higgins for Josh Jacobs, straight up 12-team Superflex start 11 PPR.
Hey, it may not be quite like smash button like the Aaron Jones deal because Aaron Jones is approaching that age 30 where Josh Jacobs is, he's got a few more years in him, a bit younger. I still rather build my team around the young wide receiver. It is start 11. So, I mean, running back could be thin. Maybe you really need a Josh Jacobs on there. There's definitely scenarios where I'm all about that. I might want Josh Jacobs, but all things being even, if I'm building my roster, I'd rather a young receiver. So I'll pick Higgins here.
Yeah. I mean, Jacobs hasn't broke 100 yards combined since like week 2 this year, like including rushing and receiving. There's just isn't enough there for me to want to buy into him. There's other running backs I'm more than willing to get. I mean, Higgins for Jacobs just isn't one of them. So give me Jacobs.
Mitch, I want to throw an impromptu question for you really quick because it involves a player that we may or may not be discussing later in the episode that Dan wanted to mention.
Okay.
Tee Higgins or Odunze?
All right. So this is what I decide to do now. If anyone will ask me this question, let's say in the DD Discord, I will tell them to take Odunze because there's enough built-in dynasty value there that I think that is the proper way to go. Personally, what I would do on my teams is I'm taking Tee Higgins because I think Tee Higgins is going to produce. I think he's the wide receiver 1 for the team. And I'm okay with that. But I completely will not tell people to do that because that is not like the best dynasty process, right?
Tee Higgins is the wide receiver 1 on the Bengals? Is that?
No, he will be next year when I'm assuming he leaves the Bengals next year, right? So he will be the wide receiver 1 for whatever team he plays for. On the Bengals, they throw so much, he might as well be the wide receiver 1 because him and Chase, they average the exact same amount of points each game pretty much.
All right, I was just checking. I like to look for clarification.
I like that you catch me on those things. It's good.
Even though sometimes you're like, that's not what I said. I'm like, yes, it is what you said. And then I go back
that
and
time
like,
and you know it.
What'd you say?
You went back and checked. I was right that time.
It was about the Kansas City Chiefs. It was about CEH and Kareem Hunt. Trust me, I'm like an elephant. I don't forget. All right, Dan. There's one quarterback that we wanted to talk about tonight to kind of split up the wide receiver discussions. And I got to say, I mean, I like to be spicy from time to time, but I don't think I disagree with you here.
Man, we're getting along tonight, boys. This is a little unusual. I'm a little uncomfortable, but I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, when I looked at this list, JB, and I saw Justin Herbert, to me, he's the most talented quarterback that you have to be patient with this year because that passing game isn't super explosive with the Chargers. But he is the quarterback that you could probably afford to buy now. And I think he's only going to be better next season. Like, he's a legitimate good quarterback on a well-coached team that everything's trending in the right direction. You know, McConkey's got it. I think he'll be even better next year when he gets a little bit stronger and, you know, another year under his belt. I think they'll continue to build around Herbert, and they'll build that organization the way Detroit built around Goff. They built to all his strengths. They put the weapons around him. They built the O-line first. That's what the Chargers was doing, O-line and run game first. And I think the pass game for fantasy is going to come later when this team becomes very good. That's just the feeling I got. I think it's a safe quarterback that's obtainable, and I'll feel good about him in my quarterback room just a little more next year.
And especially if you're not contending, I think he's the perfect target to go out. You know, we talked several weeks ago about Patrick Mahomes, and obviously the price to acquire versus the production you're getting, it's a really tough pill to swallow. But with Justin Herbert, he's going, like, right now, if there's a startup, he's in we always talk about having a startup or a league out in the wild. I would guess he's going early third round in 12-team Superflex tight end premium formats. And if you can acquire at that price in existing leagues, I'm in. You can probably use some pieces to package up to him, especially if you have a manager that you know is looking for that production right now. So like I said, with Patrick Mahomes, being a tough pill to swallow if you need to package up value and go out and acquire him, you know, it's kind of the same with Justin Herbert. It's really tough to go out if you're a contending team. But I think what makes that interesting is the flip side that I talked about already, finding him on a team that needs pieces and they want to compete. Now, if I have Justin Herbert and I'm looking to compete right now, I think you can do other things with your roster and move other assets and hang on to Justin Herbert and not have to move at what we would see as a deflated price. Because let's be honest, the volume is not there. The production is not there. But the talent has not gone away. That is certainly not the issue. And he's being, you know, efficient and somewhat productive with Ladd McConkey, Quentin Johnston, Josh Palmer, Will Dissly, Hayden Hurst. Don't forget Hayden Hurst. So I think this is a name that I think should be on this list. Mitch, what do you think about Mr. Justin Herbert before we get into the trades?
I think this is the lowest dynasty floor we're going to see with Justin Herbert for the next 5 to 8 years. So a big thing I brought up Dobbins in the DMs to John earlier about a player that we could have talked about. And the reason for this, here, let me just tell you what their schedule is moving forward. You tell me a team that they won't be able to compete against, right? I believe the Chargers are going to be a playoff team this year. So they play the Cardinals, Saints, Browns, Titans, Bengals. Ravens is going to be tough. Falcons.
Their pass secondary stinks, though.
Yeah, exactly. And then Chiefs, Buccaneers, Broncos, Patriots, Raiders. Like, they don't have a hard schedule coming up. And this isn't me saying, hey, Justin Herbert's going to be fantasy elite this year, right? But when we see these guys lose dynasty value is when their team's really bad and like you just don't have a lot of hope for it. I think Harbaugh is an amazing coach. So far, we've seen it again in the NFL to what he can just do. I think this is a playoff team. We'll see Justin Herbert in the playoffs. Maybe he goes off for 300 yards. Maybe he has a run like CJ Stroud does like what he did last year. All of a sudden, he's back up in the first round. So for me, I completely agree with Dan. Justin Herbert's a huge buy because his floor isn't dropping anymore. He isn't going to be a 4th round startup pick next year. It's just not going to happen. Buy him now because he's at worst a mid-second round. More than likely, he's going to be a late first, just like he was before this past offseason.
Yeah, JB too. You look at the stats. He's only thrown 1 interception in 125 attempts. Yeah, we'd like more than 6 touchdowns, but to Mitch's point on that soft schedule coming up, you're going to get some regression there, and those 1 touchdown games are going to become 2 touchdown games. Mm-hmm. And even though he's been quiet this season, he hasn't hurt an owner. I think he's going to help owners win some games. And the Chargers are 3-2, and they're positioned in a good place to finish strong.
Yep. All right. So, Mitch, let's start with you. Okay. And then we'll really put Dan to the test. How much conviction does he have on these Justin Herbert buys? So, Mitch, Justin Herbert for George Kittle and Trevor Lawrence, 12-team Superflex, start 10, PPR. But here's the kicker for this one. We always talk about tight end premium. there's no tight end premium here.
Yeah, so this is a great example. Is like Herbert is on what we think is going to be a good team. Trevor Lawrence is what I assume is a terrible team. I don't like Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he's a great quarterback. And a lot of it is what we see on the field and if they actually win or not. It's Justin Herbert for me because I flat out don't want Trevor Lawrence on any of my dynasty teams at this point.
Dan?
I agree with Mitch as far as, it's no tight end premium. There's a lot of uncomfortable feeling about Lawrence and what's going on with Jacksonville right now. So I want the trajectory of a Herbert and that Chargers organization. I'm going to feel good about my quarterback situation before going into any uncertainty this year. Because without the premium, it takes that, lust off of Kittle helping you win a league. Kittle's getting older. I love him this year. He's playing really well. But, the only thing I'd maybe differ a little bit, Mitch, is everybody's really falling hard on Lawrence right now. And he's still putting up some stats. I mean, he's got 1,334 yards. He's averaging, last 3 games, 18, 23, 19. And that's with the team playing terrible. A lot of that may be some garbage time points and stuff. I think this is just a real bad organization right now. So I think if I'm a Lawrence owner, I'm hoping someone comes in coaching wise and fixes this next year. And it could happen. We all love Brian Thomas, although he didn't help him last week dropping a ball. Gabe Davis dropped 2 balls last week. So this is a team that just has to figure things out. They run the ball well. They have a bad run player too. They get away from the run game that's working good most of the way. So they need some coaching right now to fix this. I'm still not out on Lawrence. I just would rather a stable, healthy Chargers situation, as you're mentioning.
But as much as we're here to talk about fantasy football and dynasty fantasy football, Mitch, you hit the nail on the head, and I think it's a very important piece here that if your team is losing, it really gets put on your shoulders as the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
If you're winning, like nobody's out there bashing Justin Herbert. You don't really see that. Yeah, he's not producing for fantasy purposes, but doesn't have that negative association when you mention Justin Herbert. Trevor Lawrence, people were like, kill him, get him, seriously. But it's funny because they're around a little over a round apart on Fantasy Calc Live overall values, but I don't think the trade market would be that way, right? I don't think it would operate that way at all. All right, Mitch, I put this one on here, not so much what he's traded for, just on paper, but I want to know the point of indifference for you, where this pick needs to be. So the trade itself is Justin Herbert for 1 2025 first, 12-team Superflex Star 10 PPR. Where are you taking Herbert? Where are you taking the pick?
A non-playoff team compared to a playoff team. So 12-team, you could pretty much say top 6 pick. I'm going to take the pick. If it's 107 through 112, then I'll go Justin Herbert.
Dan?
I think it's going to depend on my quarterback situation. I get a little worried, Mitch, if I was 105, 106, maybe 104, those quarterbacks are off the board. I don't want to not have a quarterback. So it really will depend on what's in my quarterback cupboard. Otherwise, I agree with Mitch. At face value, I'm right where Mitch is.
If it's 105, 106, I'm still going to take Justin Herbert. So I think I'm a little bit more ambitious when it comes to Herbert versus that pick. But if you are going to make a move like this, I mean, most of the people that we interact with, they're not going to pull the trigger for a 2025 first straight up, unless it looks to be locked and loaded early. But even then, it's an interesting trade to me because you're kind of pitting the what we've seen historically from Justin Herbert versus his production now. And I just think that's leaving a bad taste in people's mouth, the current situation. So again, I asked for it on the Tee Higgins trades. Drop in the comment in this format, 12-team Superflex Star 10, what pick do you need as a listener to take the pick versus Justin Herbert there. And I think we're going to get a very wide range of answers. All right.
JB, real quick, like if you have a roster that you have Lamar, Jordan Love Herbert, or Lamar Goff Herbert, like if you have that third, like that expendable quarterback where you could get 105, 106 and add a stud player, do you do it then? Or are you just, no matter what, I'm that high on Herbert, I'd rather the 3 strong quarterbacks?
I would rather see, that's an interesting one because we always, we talk about not storing that much value in your quarterback 3. The only time I would like to do that is if I'm tanking and I'm looking to consolidate points and value in one position. And I typically want that to be quarterback and super flex or 2 quarterback formats. But I think in that situation, I would go another route if it's available. Like, could I go? Oh man, could I go like Geno Smith plus something else, like Geno Smith and a first from another manager, as opposed to getting that pick that might be 105 or 106. I would still like to do something to get my quarterback 3 situation in line. If we're just saying it's Herbert or 25 first.
Well, it's a good thing we have the next question to break this up.
It's a perfect segue. Mitch, Herbert for Tua plus Jahan Dotson and a 25 first, 12-team Superflex Star 10 PPR.
Yeah, you give me another quarterback with the 25 first. I'm going to go with that package over Herbert, unless it's a really lower tier quarterback.
Dan?
I got the heebie-jeebies here with having Tua on my roster. In theory, I would say Mitch is right, but this could be my window out of Tua to a stable quarterback situation with Justin Herbert, so I'm going to take the Herbert side.
Mitch, would you do it for Geno Smith in the 25 first?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Kirk Cousins?
Love Geno. Yeah, I do Cousins too. It would have to be like a Sam Darnold tier.
Okay, so one tier down. Okay.
Yeah.
So
but Geno's 34. Geno's 34. Doesn't that get you a little nervous? It's Dynasty. You don't want that young, shiny quarterback.
Man. Yeah, I got 3 years. I'm good.
Well, especially if your quarterback situation is like the one that Dan mentioned, where you maybe have Lamar.
Hey.
Lamar.
That's a new one.
Well, I was thinking Lamar, Tua, they got combined into Lamar. That would be their couple name in Hollywood. Lamar. Anyway, Lamar and Love. So anyway, let's move on. Mitch, Herbert, Pollard, and a 25 second for Bijan Robinson. 12-team start 9, 0.5 PPR.
Going Herbert and Pollard. I'll say
Agree.
Dan was right on Pollard. He was talking about him all offseason. He was completely right. Pollard's taking over that backfield. He looks really good.
Yeah, he looks good behind that O-line. Plus, you're getting a second here. As much as I love Bijan, that's just too much to pass up.
Yep.
And now Spears is week to week. All right, Mitch. Herbert, 25 first and a 26 first for Josh Allen. 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
This one's tough. Honestly, I think I personally can do more with Herbert, the 25 first and the 26 first, than I can just having Josh Allen on my team. I think I could use that liquidity to pick up more pieces, so I will go to that side. Although I think value-wise, I think it's just about dead even. You're getting about almost 4 firsts for Josh Allen in that point.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Josh Allen side. It is tough. I agree, Mitch. I just think Josh Allen's a unicorn, and I want him on my roster.
I also will go Josh Allen, but that's, like you said, Mitch, you're pushing 4-ish first there. Where that 25 first is could certainly make this a conversation, but I go with Dan. All right, last one. Justin Herbert for Tyreek and Stafford, 12-team Superflex, start 10 PPR.
Herbert.
Same, especially start 10. If it was a little deeper league, I might, start 11, start 12. I might think different, but start 10, give me Herbert.
Especially if things have not gone the way that you're looking for this season, like getting off of Stafford is a win here. especially to get up into that quarterback that's giving you that stability and that safety right now. Not so much production, like we've talked about, but giving you that insulated value. I wanted to go through several trades with Justin Herbert and Tee Higgins, like we typically do, where they're structured very differently. Like with Justin Herbert, we broke him up in a few spots. We packaged up for a Josh Allen. We packaged up for a positional player. We broke him down for a broken Tua and picks. So I wanted to kind of put a different lens on it, if you will, and kind of go in different directions, because we all know that people play Dynasty in different ways. Sometimes people like to package up. Sometimes they like to, during the offseason, you guys call me the UPS man because I'm taking the package in a lot of situations. But there are different things that I wanted to look at there. All right, Mitch. We are downs with Downs.
What?
Josh Downs.
Bro, what are you talking about, man?
Aren't we up with Downs?
No, but
I get down.
Like I'm down with it. Like
it took me a second. I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry.
that's like the
I'm
Cole
old,
lingo from like the 80s, right?
I get.
I'm downs with that.
So a big thing for me is Josh. Everyone who listened to Dynasty Theory before we came over to DD Fantasy, all off season, I was talking about Michael Pittman, the first reads. All of them are going to go to Michael Pittman. He's going to do extremely well. Well, it comes to find out it's really Josh Downs who is what I thought Michael Pittman was going to be. He's getting 34% of the first read looks. It's amazing how many he's getting. And then you go over to the Trinity score. He's borderline a top 20 guy on Trinity. His target share, 27%. Points per game, 16%. Air yards, his is always going to be a little bit lower just because of how they do Alec Pierce and how that offense is, but it's 25%, right? It's perfectly fine. Like, he is everything that I wanted Michael Pittman to be, and he's doing it with Joe Flacco. I think he's going to do it perfectly fine with Anthony Richardson. I don't think that is going to change because I think Josh Downs' skill set actually fits really well with Anthony Richardson. So the one issue that I have is I think he's going to be a really hard buy because I think anyone who has him is going to be really high on him because he's a really young guy who's producing each week. He didn't have a huge cost coming in, right? So anyone who's looking to move him, I think you're going to have to pay a little bit more than I'm willing to. But if he's a guy that you could go out and get a little bit over market, I really like that move.
Talked about with Tee Higgins, but looking at trends in the last 3 weeks, 16th in the Trinity score, 19.2 points per game. That's 7th across wide receivers, 31% air yard share, 27% target share, 2.53 yards per route run. Before we start to get into the trades here, Dan, let me ask you. So Josh Downs, a strong 3 weeks. Mitch made a comment, and I want to go the other way with it. It's not, is he doing it in spite of Joe Flacco? Is he doing it because of Joe Flacco?
I think he's good no matter what. I've been a Josh Downs guy this offseason. Up to a few weeks ago, I was able to still acquire him. I think Mitch is right. It's going to start getting harder because we've had 3 good weeks in a row. I think if you lose Joe Flacco, I get a little bit nervous that the consistency won't be there. I think he'll still have splash weeks, good weeks. He's just one of those smaller receivers that's just a really good route runner and is better than the rest. So I think the talent's there. I'm in on Josh Downs. He was a guy I put on the list there. I think he might be quarterback proof. He just needs to stay healthy. That's my biggest concern, over the long haul. If Richardson comes back, I think he'll still have good games. Richardson liked him last year, liked him in the preseason. We'll see how this all plays out, but I'm down on Downs, as you said, or up on Downs, as Mitch said. I don't know which it is. Maybe both.
We're up, we're down, we're sideways. It's like the Wonka Vader.
Just acquire it. That's all I'm saying. Just acquire.
All right, Dan. Josh Downs for, let's call it an early 25-second, 12-team Superflex, start 9 PPR.
I'm with Josh Downs because when I take that early second round pick, I'm hoping to find a Josh Downs, and you've got him. So Josh Downs all the way.
Agree with Dan.
Mitch, would you do it if it's a mid 25-second and a late 25-second in start 9?
Yeah. No, like Dan said, Josh Downs is the guy you're hoping to find there. Why not just have the guy that you can find there? I know you get you could do other things with that second round pick. I understand you don't have to draft the player. That makes all the sense in the world. Just give me the better player and I'm okay with it. It's not like you're trading for a 30-year-old wide receiver either, or a 28-year-old wide receiver. He's 23 now, if I remember right. Might be 22. Yeah, just give me Josh Downs.
But you could have that mystery box.
You can, and it's so nice. It
might be Josh Downs. But the biggest thing,
Jalen Hyatt.
Right. Jalen Hyatt. Oh, that biggest thing would be the increased flexibility. I think that's the big win. But like, if like Josh Downs, if you can get this type of production, like you said, Mitch, you are praying that you get that type of production out of any of these second round picks. Hell, you're praying you get the production from late first round picks with all the busts we see and the variance like that, but again, that's another conversation where it's like using the pick, saving the pick, moving the pick, increased flexibility. So anyway, Dan, Downs and Sutton for JSN in a 25 third, 12-team super flex, start 7 PPR. And I'm not trying to format shame. I should not have snickered there, but it's a start 7.
I'm sure it's a fun league, JB, but yeah, start whatever. Like, this is a fun trade. I'd have 1 for 1. Hey, is Downs a guy like, would I like JSN a little bit better? More, yeah, I think he's a little bit bigger and durable. Mitch says no, but every time we dog him on Dynasty Theory or in our DD Fantasy Football Patreon, JSN bounces back. It'll have 16 or 12 targets or something great. But you're going to throw in Cortland Sutton, who I still like a lot. I think Downs is very close to JSN. Or if you're with Mitch seems to like Downs more. Give me the package.
Yeah, dude. I mean, it's the whole thing with Jason. It's like, oh, just wait till Tyler Lockett's out of the way, then he's going to be good. Or he could just do Josh Downs, who's already good on his team, even though there's target competition there. I mean, JSN's giving you pretty much 6 for 50 a week. He had the one huge game. Besides that, 6 for 50 would be great. You're getting 11 points out of him. Give me Josh Downs. I think he's just a flat out better wide receiver. And Cortland Sutton is flat out producing this year. He is doing great. So that over a 3rd round pick, yeah, give me the good wide receivers.
We talk. I'm just tongue-tied tonight, gentlemen. We talk about my mind is always moving a little bit faster than my mouth wants to work. But we talk about the Trinity score. There we go. Sutton's one of those guys that pops off the chart too. He's just such an unsexy name, but like that touchdown catch back of the end zone. Ooh, that was nice. But yeah, you're like, ideally, hopefully, you're not starting any of these guys in a start 7 when it comes down to it. But Josh Downs and JSN, the only difference there is name value. Dan, Josh Downs and Bucky Irving taking over that Tampa Bay backfield, or Keon Coleman and Travis Etienne, 12-team start 9, half PPR.
Before I try to answer this tough one, JB, I just want to make one plug too towards that Trinity score. I've been starting to look at those a little bit more in the DFS. I think sometimes the NFL is a funny business, and we look week to week and we kind of panic or go out on guys. And you look at Cortland Sutton, who's had a couple games where he's kind of disappeared. And I think it's just the product of the Denver offense, not Cortland Sutton. So you see those Trinity numbers. It's like, hey, he's a guy I know he's going to have some breakout games. And he does. He has a couple big touchdowns and some big games. Hopefully there's some more, yards for him ahead of the future. So I think it's an important thing for our listeners to use that tool. As far as this trade, man, I wish I had a crystal ball for next season, please, because I really don't know where this is going. Yeah, I'm getting nervous on ETN, but like, hey, is Bucky Irvin, even though he's looking a little bit like a shinier toy right now, there's no guarantees he's a lead back, and ETN still could be. Keon Coleman, I'm not really excited about. I definitely like Josh Downs more than them. So I'm going to lean Josh Downs and Bucky Irvin just because they're playing better football right now. But I'm not really feeling super confident in that, with Keon being attached to Josh Allen, and ETN, hey, if he's healthy and gets on a good team, who knows what the future could bring. But give me Downs and Bucky just for the answer to this question.
As we're recording here, I try not to do like a live play-by-play during these Monday night games, but we're 3 minutes into the third quarter, gentlemen. Keon Coleman does not have a target.
Yeah.
That's concerning.
And I'm not watching, so is he? I don't even know if he's on the field. But anyway, back to this trade, Mitch.
No, that's the thing. It's like if we keep saying targets is a talent stat, like the more talented you are, the more targets you're going to get. What does that say about Keon Coleman to this point? Because it's not for lack of playing time. He's on the field enough. We saw the back shoulder throws last week. He looked pretty good, but he's only getting 3 or 4 targets a game, maybe 5 targets a game. And that's just not enough there. I think the big thing is, how do you feel about ETN compared to Bucky Irving?
Yes.
It's tough. I think the value side is still on the Keon Coleman, Travis Etienne side. I'm personally still going to go Josh Downs and Bucky Irving.
And think about that. Like we always say, like if you would have told me this 6 weeks ago, I would have said, what are we talking about? What are we doing here, guys? But that's how quickly this game changes. For the record, I would go Downs and Bucky as well.
JB, this is one too, probably like where if I was offered this trade, I'd want to reach out to you, slide through the DMs a little bit and have you talk the coach out of me. Because when you get a Keon Coleman who's like 6'4", 215, you get ETN who has the pedigree coming out of Clemson. But man, we're watching the games, we're seeing the targets, as Mitch mentioned. Like, I'm sure, JB, the spreadsheets really are kind of stacking up for Josh Downs and Bucky Irvin versus ETN and Keon Coleman.
Yeah. It's hard to produce when you're not getting targets at wide receiver. All right, Dan, we're going through all these metrics and these stats. And I said this to Mitch when you were having some IT issues there, but we were talking about some of the names here. And I was like, I don't have any encouraging stats for this guy, but Rome Odunze, Dan, you are still okay going out to acquire.
Yeah, he's another one where I was trying to find some.
Oh, wait, Keon Coleman has a 5-yard catch just now.
They heard you, JB. They heard you. You motivated them.
Sorry about
that.
But
no, when I looked at your list, JB, again, I'm looking at, hey, who could we acquire? Not given the easy answer. And Rome is the guy that hasn't blown up yet, obviously. I think he's the most attainable, talented wide receiver that is tied to Caleb Williams. And I'm watching Bears games because I'm excited to watch Caleb Williams. And I watched again this past weekend versus Jaguars, probably because it was the only game on too at 9:30 in the morning in London. And although Rome he had like 2 targets. They were nice routes. He got open. He made catches. He was pumped after he caught it. Like the talent's there. I think this is still an evolving offense. I mean, hey, you still got DJ Moore. You still got Keenan Allen. So I think you're just going to have to be a little bit patient. But Keenan Allen's not getting any younger. And I think Rome's going to be fine. I think while he's attainable, this is your window, Dynasty owners. When else are you going to get Rome when he's only had like 6, 9, and 2 points the last 3 weeks? It's the best time.
Yeah, I agree with Dan. He's averaging like 3 catches over the whole season so far, each game. He's all right. It's nothing that we love, but he's a guy that absolutely believed in coming into the draft. Where he was drafted, I didn't love it, but now kind of like it. Caleb is turning it on. He's starting to look really good. So I'm kind of buying into the offense. My biggest worry is Caleb. I was talking to a buddy about this today. Caleb is going to save that coaching staff's jobs this season, right? And like that is the most worrying thing for me if I was a Chicago Bears fan, if I'm a Rome Odunze fan, if I'm a Caleb Williams fan, right? Like I don't want that to happen. But I completely agree with Dan. Rome is a great buy right now still.
Yeah, it especially because we talked about kind of where he was going in rookie drafts. If a team that's contending is kind of getting fed up and they're not able to do anything with him, I think there are opportunities to move off of some of these veterans that maybe you have been looking to move off of and haven't been able to. And I'm not saying like, any wide receiver that has taken a few years or could break out eventually. It's like, well, look at what Devontae Adams did his first 2 years. That was every receiver people wanted to compare, like a lackluster first couple years in the NFL, right? And I think now you're going to see, well, look what happened with Nico Collins. So I think that's like this generation. And, in the NFL, a generation is like 5 years, but because every talent is so generational. But I think there's still going to be hope, and there's going to be that optimism overall for Rome Odunze. But you can probably find some frustrated managers that don't want to carry that risk. So, Mitch, let me start with you on these. Rome Odunze in a 25 first for AJ Brown in a 25 second, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
That 25 second definitely flips it for me. I'll go AJ Brown.
If I'm rebuilding, I want Roman the first. If I'm contending, I want Brown in the second. I'm with you, Mitch. I'd rather that not be a second because that's probably a high second based on this trade. But
I think it's a super fair trade. And I think that's, oftentimes we don't see too many trades on these episodes where we're like, okay, that really makes sense for both teams. I think that one does.
Yep.
Mitch, Odunze in a 25 first for Nico Collins, 12-team Superflex start 10 PPR.
Oh, I said it 2 weeks ago. Nico Collins to me is Jamar Chase right next to Just Jefferson. I want Nico Collins.
Yeah. How about I tried to trade Nico this past week for Lamb? And the deal breaker, the guy put a deal. All I wanted to take out of the deal was he wanted my Brock Bowers, and he was giving me Sam Laporta. You know I'm a Georgia fan, guys. I didn't want to lose Brock Bowers. He got mad at me and was insulted that I had to get the better end of the trade. That's just my little vent and rant right now. But JB's got me sold on Nico. His plays got me sold on Nico. I'm hoping this little injury is just a little, blip in the radar. But his stock's so high right now that I was able to at least talk about CeeDee Lamb in a trade. So,
Dan, that's a pretty big ask, though, based on current market conditions. The Brock and Sam Laporta thing. And like that's all credit to you. You were paying above market on Brock post NFL draft. Like everybody liked Brock Bowers. It's not like, Dan was the only one in the
Dan
world.
was the only one on him.
But
I was all chips in.
You were paying above market because I remember at the time some of the trades, Mitch, I like kind of glance over to you on the screen and be like, oh, what is this dude doing? But like that's a pretty big ask of you. I'm not saying it's insulting, but you'd probably still need to add a little something. Just saying.
Yeah. So there was more to that deal here nor there, but that's just my vent. But unless that's a real high first, give me Nico.
Dan is probably failing to mention that he also wanted Bijan Robinson, Garrett Wilson, and Patrick Mahomes in the deal, right?
No, I was giving Jordan Mason, and he was like, I don't know. I think I tried to get Braylon Allen in there, and I don't know. It didn't materialize.
Try to get Emmitt Smith thrown into the deal, whatever. All right, Mitch, Rome Odunze in a 25 first. A lot of people are packaging Rome Odunze in their 25 first. Maybe, but that's kind of what I said earlier. Teams that might be looking to contend, they're looking to move their first. They're looking to move Odunze because he's going to have value in trades. So Odunze in a 25 first for Cooper Kupp and CMC, 12 teams, start 9 PPR. Because if you want to win the league, you need to get guys that are injured.
Look, I'll take Odunze over Kupp. I would have done it before the season even started. That doesn't change based off injuries. And right now, I'll take a 25 first over CMC.
Yeah, I'm on the Roman and first side. And I imagine this is a rebuild for a contender trade. It makes sense. But give me the Roman the first.
All right, Dan, Rome Odunze for 25 first, just like we did for Justin Herbert. Where does that pick need to be to take the pick?
Mid-late first, I want Rome. Early, give me the first.
Yeah, I say the 107.
All right. Mitch, Rome Odunze for Kenneth Walker, 12 teams, start 10 PPR.
Contending, I'll take Kenneth Walker here.
Yeah, Kenneth Walker's in that class of very young running backs that I want. 23 years of age. There's not many of them that you're going to have.
That's starting to catch a lot of balls too. They're not taking him off on third down anymore, and that's huge for him.
15 catches the last 2 games. Holy cow. If they just get that O-line and run game going, this guy could take off.
Yep.
If he would have just done any of that in college, I would have loved the kid.
Right? They were holding out on us, boys.
Yeah.
That was one of the
weapon.
things we were kind of talking about, back in the day. Mitch was one of the first to be high on Kenneth Walker, and I was just, where's the passing game, It's all coming together for Kenneth.
Yeah, whatever. All right, Mitch, Rome Odunze and Carson Steele for Brandon Ayuk, 12 teams, start 10 PPR.
Brandon Ayuk for me.
Me too. Even though his attitude sucks, he's still much better. I love Ayuk. Carson Steele's nothing. So
Yeah.
Dan is like, the coach in me, I don't want him, his attitude sucks, but he's just better. Give me bread.
Hey, he can win me games. Yeah.
All right, last player here.
Yes, sir.
To wrap up the show, Demario Douglas. And Mitch, this is your guy, but let me get started real quick. Over the last 2 weeks, and I say last 2 weeks because he was dinged up a little bit, but 13th in Trinity score, 18 targets over the last 2 weeks, 27% target share, 16.6% points per game, 34% air yard share, 2.6 yards per route run. He now has a quarterback that's willing to throw the ball down the field. He's able to escape and move the pocket. He is able to find receivers. And it's always interesting whenever you get guys where their quarterback changes because you don't really know what that relationship is going to look like in the rapport that develops. If we're getting that connection early on between Demario Douglas and Drake May, I think it's going to continue. And we saw some negative blurbs from the coaching staff about Jalen Polk, and he just needs to kind of get out of his head. And it wasn't a glowing endorsement, even though he's running all the routes, Mitch. But Demario Douglas, I love that you include this name on here because we go through so many different price points, and this is probably the one that's going to be most easily attainable.
Look, before DFS Sunday, yesterday morning, I went in. I was like, hey, Drake May played that fourth quarter a few weeks ago. I wanted to see who he was targeting. He threw 8 attempts. I'm like, hey, 3 of them went to Demario Douglas. I'm like, they're both really cheap. So I threw my lineup and I had a great DFS day because of it. And I think a big reason is we get kind of stuck in these minds of like, oh, this Patriots, dude, we saw it even in the DD Discord. Oh, Drake May's going to die behind that line, right? Oh, they're going to kill him. He's going to get injured. And he might get injured. So might every single other quarterback in the NFL, right? But what this kid brings every Sunday through athleticism, through his arm, just gives that offense so much more. And Demario Douglas is going to be his number one guy now. You tell me, look, if this was Caleb Williams going there, we'd be like, oh, hey, we want his number one guy. For whatever reason,
yes,
people were really high on Drake May. Whatever the reason is, I really don't care because they were wrong. But it's okay. Anywho, Demario Douglas, like, he's going to be his number one guy. He's going to have a 28% market target share on the season. You tell me I get that with Drake May, with how good this defense is, and now they're going to be able to move the ball. I'm all about it. And so I'm just willing to go out and get Demario Douglas on most of my teams because, like you said, John, he's going to be easier to acquire because there's going to be a lot of people who are like, oh, no, they were just playing catch up. Like, no, not really. Drake May was balling out since, after he threw that first pick in the first quarter, he was fine after that, man.
All right, let me get through some trades here. Dan, I want to start with you. And again, these are all over the last 24 hours. So maybe the price has changed a little bit. I'm sure it will, just a tad, when people saw that Drake May, okay, he was competent behind that offensive line. Demario Douglas for DeAndre Hopkins and Gus Edwards, 12-team start 9 PPR.
If I'm a rebuilder, this is close. I'm easily Pop Douglas. And I'm glad Mitch, put this guy on the list to you, JB. It warmed my heart. I loved him coming out of college. His highlight film, if you could go back and watch it, he is a dude. And now he's got a quarterback that could throw him the ball, and he's on a football team with very limited weapons. So it's a pretty good situation for some PPR. But if I'm a contender, I mean, this year, Nuke and I think Gus is going to get healthy and get back in that mix. It's probably a good trade for both teams, but I'll take Pop,
as a contender, I want Douglas too.
Yeah, but I think Nuke's got some good games in him. I think so does Gus Edwards. But long-term dynasty, you want Pop.
Gus is on IR right now, so he's got at least 3 more weeks.
I'm going Douglas. I'm completely fine with Douglas here.
With Will Levis at quarterback, Hopkins might as well be on IR.
That's true,
I know
too.
Calvin Ridley should be on IR.
That situation is true.
Wow. Anyway, talk about a complete shift from the first 2 weeks of the season with Calvin Ridley's usage to whatever it's been. All right, Dan, Demario Douglas for a 25 third, 12-team start 9 PPR.
Man, I was giving away thirds or trying to trade into the third to get Pop Douglas. So his rookie season. That's an easy smash for Pop.
Agreed.
I wonder if you could do a pair of thirds and get Douglas in some
No,
spots.
I think you could.
Take him.
Yeah. All right, Dan. Douglas, Tracy, hot commodity there, and a 25-second for Tank Dell. 12-team start 11 PPR.
Coming strong here, man. So we just still don't have a crystal ball on Tracy yet there. So I want to take Dell, man. Just tight to Stroud, and those explosive weeks, they'll come.
Yeah, I'm going Tank Dell here.
See, I'm going to go the package here because, again, I don't know that the overall production, and maybe Mitch has just really done such a great job in general of selling me on Demario Douglas that I want the package here.
And the hard thing for me is I know we all want to believe Tracy is going to take over this backfield once Singletary comes back, right? Singletary is the back that this coaching staff wanted to bring in. Anyone who watched Hard Knocks in the offseason, they broke down all of the free agent running backs. Singletary was the one they picked. So while we as dynasty managers and people who look at rookies coming in, we could love a guy like Tracy, and Tracy could end up still being the guy. I'm just saying we don't know. For all intents and purposes, they come back and Singletary gets 65% of the snaps as soon as he comes back. We don't know. So for me, it's really hard for me to go, hey, I like Douglas, I like Tracy, I like a second, but I love Tank Dell.
I think your analysis and thoughts on Tracy versus Singletary. If Singletary's healthy, I do think he continues to get the bulk of the work. But if he's not healthy, then we see the upside in Tracy. Yeah. But you're also getting that additional piece and flexibility and insulation in the pick with probably minimal difference in production, hopefully between Douglas and Tank Dell. So I'm still packaged there. But this last one, I'm interested to get your thoughts, guys, because you all know that I was and am a little bit lower on Keon Coleman. But Dan, Demario Douglas, Keon Coleman in a 25-second for Devontae Adams. 12-team start 10 PPR.
This is so painful, but I just have to get more for Devontae Adams. I'm struggling with Keon Coleman, and as we talked about his 1 for 5 tonight. Yeah. I like Pop. I really do. I think he's a good receiver, but again, it's on a thin receiving corps that hopefully gets better over time, and I think he'll still have a role. The second just isn't quite enough for me. I think either Adams gets traded in a good situation or the Raiders draft a quarterback next year, and then he has I just need a little bit more. So I'm going to go Adams, but it's close.
Yeah, dude, here's my problem. Adams is stuck on your roster. This is like the trade.
True.
You're never going to get a first for Devontae Adams. That's out the window. So you already have the 25-second there. All right, that's a decent base. You're getting Keon Coleman. Hate him or not hate him, you could probably trade him for a late second if you wanted to, or maybe a third, right? So you get 2 seconds there. And then you get Demario Douglas, who is going to perform this year. And I'm not sold on wide receivers getting traded mid-season actually being able to provide you any value on your dynasty teams. So for me, I'm easily going with the package here. On any roster, I don't care if I'm first in the standings or last in the standings. I want the Demario Douglas side.
All right. Well, hopefully this sparks some ideas for everybody, but these are just, like I said, 4 receivers and a quarterback that we're looking to potentially go out and target in trade discussions, test the waters. Sometimes it's not there. Or if you're on the other side and you're like, oh God, now I can finally get one of these guys off my rosters, just see what the market is. You might be pleasantly surprised. Maybe you can recoup the value that you were looking for previously. Make sure you drop a like on the video, hit that subscribe button here on DD Fantasy Football. For Mitch Sorensen, Dan Lamagna, I'm John Bauer. Week 7 is quickly approaching. We'll catch you guys next week. Peace.